Hi, and welcome to the Business Growth Journey with me, Nick Termini. And today we've got Lisa Peña of Urban Hikes, Kansas City. Lisa, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, cool. Well, first, how did we meet each other?
We were at a Coffee Connect, and that's how we met.
Yeah, you actually showed me around North Kansas City, and there were several murals, and I think you have a path here that you guys go on, right?
That is right. You were on our first inaugural urban hike in North Kansas City.
Yeah.
We were exploring North Kansas City together with a group of people.
Awesome. Well, cool, Lisa. Well, really excited to have you on the show to be able to share your story and your journey in life, but also building Urban Hikes Kansas City, which is an awesome business. Uh, so first, where'd you grow up? Where?
Yeah, I grew up right here in Kansas City. I grew up in Kansas City, Kansas, in the Rosedale area.
Awesome. And so, where did you go to school? Like, what was your path, kind of getting started in business?
Yeah, thinking about my path getting started in business, it probably was related to going to UMKC and getting my master's of public administration there. But
Oh,
my focus was nonprofit administration. But I
okay.
was surrounded by um, professors and at the Block School, which is a school of entrepreneurship. So I would say that that might have been like a little bit of a catalyst, but I would say that the initial catalyst for being an entrepreneur was a lot sooner than that and really didn't have to do with any schooling itself.
Yeah, okay, we're off and running. So how did that first light bulb go off in your head?
When I was in high school, I loved to make bracelets and necklaces out of beads, and I started to make them and sell them because I loved to make them so much. I was like, well, I need to do something with this, so I sold them, and I remember selling them to my friends and my high school teachers. And I would say that was the first time that I actually started to create a product and sell it. Additionally, thinking back to those high school days, I remember my economics class. And in economics class, I had the opportunity to go to a summer camp through junior achievement. And there was a lot of aspects of that summer camp that had to do with entrepreneurship and being a business owner. Um, I would say that also were just some seeds that were planted at a very young age.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so back to the bracelets. Because everybody has like that first thing that's like, oh, okay, like they're paying me for this. Were you making the bracelets for the love of the game, or did you see an actual capitalistic idea out of it?
I
Did you
was
plan on selling them, or how did it come together?
was making the bracelets for the love of the game.
All
And
right.
yeah, yeah. And then I just wanted to keep making them. And I thought, well, I can't wear all these bracelets. And I would give them to my friends. So there were a few friends that actually did charge. I would sometimes charge my teachers because I knew they had a steady stream of income. But it was really for the love of the game.
Oh man, that's great. By the way, I appreciate the homework assignment. Now I'd like to talk to you about this promo I'm running on bracelets. Oh, that's great. That's a great brand ambassador showcasing to the student union, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so after that, did you have any other entrepreneurial type things in high school?
No, I would really say it was just that I went to Sumner Academy, and the focus there is arts and sciences. And there was
Okay.
a just a really strong focus on college prep as well. So it was really about at the time about where you're going to go to college. And I have a degree, an undergrad degree and a graduate degree, but it was really just on my own. And at that time, there weren't all the pop-up opportunities that we have today where you can be at different fairs and pop-ups and have your table. If there were those opportunities, I think I really would have had a lot larger bracelet and necklace business at the time.
Oh wait, there were necklaces too?
Yeah, yeah, I would make necklaces also, like heft necklaces, beaded necklaces, like the choker style, which
Yeah,
is
oh yeah.
actually.
Oh man, it's funny. I actually remember wearing those, and my neck used to be even bigger, like from playing football, and so it'd be like I could pop it off. Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's hilarious. I would have made you a second one then if you would have broke.
Yeah, I would have need two banded together. one to get over my head, two to fit around my neck. Okay, so then you mentioned, first of all, this is off to a great start. Where did you go for your undergrad after high school?
I went to Azusa Pacific University, and it is a school near Pasadena, California.
Very
It's
cool.
a Christian-based school, so there was integrated, like my core studies were also integrated with different Christian study, like Bible classes and that type of thing.
Awesome. So what the journey is on. So what's it like going from the Midwest out to the West Coast at such a young age?
It was surprising. I remember I got there and people would walk to class barefoot. I was like, whoa, we don't do this in Kansas. A lot of people rode skateboards, and I didn't have a car, so I actually started skateboarding myself. And
Cool.
I just got some of my guy friends that had skateboards to teach me, and I got a longboard, which was something that I had never seen in Kansas. Now we sometimes see longboards, but I had never seen it until I got there, and longboards ride so smoothly. So I learned to do that, and I would get everywhere on campus on my longboard. And outside of campus, I would go grocery shopping with a big backpack and fill up my backpack and then ride on my skateboard back to my dorm. And so there was those aspects that like very California, everybody wore flip flops, and that was before flip flops were so common. Now still in Kansas, everyone wears flip flops. Kansas and Missouri, but at the time, hardly anyone wore flip flops. And I remember everyone wore flip flops there. So there was a lot of really like culture shock, but it was also really cool to experience a whole different culture there.
Yeah, I mean, so it's wild when you go to college and then you have a roommate that's not your mom and dad or your brother and sister, and it's like, huh, they they eat different stuff. They do different things. They have all these different things that I never even thought about. Well,
Yeah,
and there's some really good ideas there. Like, why haven't I been doing that the whole time?
right.
So being able to go from here to California, it's got to be like total culture shock. Besides the flip flops and the barefoot, what were some other things where you were like, "Holy cow, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. What's this all about?"
Yeah, I would say I was really impressed by the immigrant community there.
Okay,
There's a large Armenian population,
okay,
additionally, a really large Hispanic population. And at the time, I was working really hard to learn Spanish, and that connects to my story a little bit later on. My entire life, I've I've been on this mission to learn Spanish, and I would say I finally am extremely fluent. But in the time that I was in college, I would just go to the store sometimes to be able to talk to the people at the supermarket that spoke Spanish. There's a flea market next door, and I would go to the market not really to buy things, but just to talk to the different vendors because there's so many people that were predominantly Spanish speakers there. I really liked that aspect of the immigrant community, specifically from Latin America, and just to speak with them and talk with them, and then selfishly improve my Spanish.
that's awesome. So do you still keep in touch with anybody from when you were out in California?
Yeah, I keep in touch with my former roommates.
That's awesome. It's fun. I've bought two different versions of Rosetta Stone through the years, and I don't think I've ever opened it.
You said you two, and you've never opened them.
I
You
opened
know,
one,
you,
and I'm like, I don't know the passcode. I can't figure it out. Like,
those
yeah,
are expensive too.
yeah. The first one, I was like, because I was like, I want to learn Spanish. Like, it's a great idea. Like, I want to like be able to communicate in different ways and open my brain up. And I never got very far. So that's really cool how you challenged yourself and we're open to the world to go and have these conversations where it's maybe a little outside of your comfort zone, but curiosity, right? Would you consider yourself to be a pretty curious person?
I'm so curious, and I think that and that's led me in my business a lot of times because you have to be curious to be able to explore Kansas City. And my guides and I will see something new and we'll be like, oh, well, what about this? Does this mean this? And oh, let's research this. And how does it connect with this? I'm so curious.
Oh, it's wild the amount of rabbit holes you can go down with all the information available now. So your time, how long were you in? Did you graduate from there and then move back, or what was the path after being out in California for college?
Yeah, I graduated, and shortly after I went into the Peace Corps in Dominican Republic.
Wait, and what was your degree in?
It was called liberal studies, but it was focused on elementary education. That's
Okay.
what most people at my school would do to become teachers.
Okay. Cool. And then so after that, you said you went to the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, yeah. I was accepted into the Peace Corps, and it was exciting to travel to California. But then I got the travel bug, and I was like, well, if I can travel and live in California, can I live in another country?
Yeah.
And I applied for Peace Corps, and I was accepted. It was a long process. It took a whole school year to for
Okay.
the papers to go through. And then I went to Dominican Republic in September after graduating college.
Wow. So could for people that aren't as familiar with the Peace Corps, could you just talk about, what that is and who they serve?
Yeah. Yeah, the Peace Corps is a program that was started by the US government, by John F. Kennedy, by President John F. Kennedy during his presidency. And he the government decided to send volunteers that are American volunteers to other countries to live for a 2 year period. So it's not just a short time, a 2 year period to actually work in sustainable development in that country. There are different sectors. For example, there is a water sector, an entrepreneurship sector. I was part of the health sector. So I specifically worked with youth and women regarding just health in general. So there's a lot of different aspects of it, but the idea wasn't that I just go and I try to make changes on my own. The idea is really that the volunteer works hand in hand with the community, learns what the community's needs are regarding whatever that sector is, and then does sustainable work. So even when the volunteer leaves, there that work is still continuing, or the impacts are there's a ripple effect on the impacts.
That's awesome. So that definitely sounds like it opens some doors of curiosity.
Yes. Yeah. I'm so grateful for my Peace Corps experience. I
Yeah.
really feel like it helped to equip me for the rest of my life.
That's awesome. So I after college, I moved away and lived in Georgia, Detroit for a couple months, Virginia Beach for 4 years, and then Des Moines for three. And being able to and that's just in the United States, obviously, but being able to go somewhere without knowing anybody, and it's you challenge yourself, but in a lot of ways, right? Like the game, it kind of sounds like a game where you would go and talk to people in Spanish to for yourself, but then to get to know people in the culture, right? And I remember the first time I went to like a movie by myself, and I'm looking around, I'm like 23 years old. I'm like, this is crazy. And then you see groups of people come in and they're sitting by themselves and look, like it was weird the insecurities I had. And then the movie started. I'm like, oh, we're just watching a movie. This is cool. And then after that, it was no big deal. But I remember growing up seeing people eating by themselves in a restaurant and feeling bad for them. And like then I got to where I would do it all the time, and I actually enjoy it. You know what I mean? So and so like I think after you do those kind of things, it helps stretch your comfort zone, but then also creates more curiosity about different cultures and getting to know people.
Yeah, I completely agree. It stretches, yeah, stretches our comfort zone, and I think that stretching of a comfort zone is so important because otherwise we won't do anything that's risky in our lives if we don't stretch our comfort zone. And some of the things that are most rewarding are the things that are a little bit risky, that are of course safe risks, but they're some of the most rewarding things.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, now you're in the Dominican Republic. What's running through your head? Like, did you have that moment where you got there, you're like, what have I gotten myself into? Or was it just sheer enthusiasm right out of the gate?
It was hard. It was hard. I mean, California culture shock was nothing compared to
Yeah,
culture shock of the Dominican Republic
I get that.
living there. It was hard. I don't think that I ever questioned why I was there, or it never occurred to me to go back, because it was a 2 year commitment, and I thought I didn't think that never occurred to me that I would go back unless I needed to, like if there was some reason, that they evacuated us. But I never thought that I would choose to go back on my own. And I didn't. I ended up staying a third year because I liked my term so much with the Peace Corps. And so I extended my 2 year commitment to 3 years. But there were definitely challenges. It was hard for me to get to know the I would say to become accustomed to the culture, things were really different. I mean, basic things like cold water showers. We're not used to that here. And that was something I had to get used to. Drinking the water, you have to always drink bottled water, so you have to be careful with that. Thought that I had gotten pretty good at Spanish because I was, I practiced. I had actually studied abroad in Mexico, and I only had friends that spoke Spanish, and I felt like I was very close to those friends, and so I could express myself really well and understand them really well. But then Dominican Spanish is really different than the Spanish that I had learned, and I felt like I had such a hard time understanding the people that I would interact with. For example, if I was out shopping at a local store, if I was riding public transportation, I could always understand my Spanish teachers because they focused on speaking slowly and correctly. But the language was hard for me to really wrap my mind around. And now, though, I mean, I'm completely used to it. I feel like the way that I speak Spanish has a Dominican accent, and I can understand Spanish from any Latin American country because I feel like that kind of broke me in. But those were a couple. Those were a couple things. Just kind of those. And those are just the superficial things. There are lots of deeper challenges as well.
So you were doing ice bucket plunge or cold water plunges before it was like a trendy, cool thing, right?
That's funny. Yeah, yeah. They always say in the Dominican Republic, they're always like, "Oh yeah, hot showers. That's not good for you.
Ugh.
Cold water. That's good for you." So they've been doing it for years and probably healthier for it.
Yeah, hey, no problem waking up after that, right? So what were your living quarters like? Was it similar to a dorm or a house?
Yeah, when during my Peace Corps time, there are a couple different phases. When I first arrived, we were in training, and we we part of the time we're in the city in Santo Domingo. So just imagine just a very busy city with lots of cars, a whole lot of motorcycles everywhere, and I lived with a host family in a neighborhood. I remember when I would try to go to sleep at night around 10 o'clock, it was so hard to go to sleep because the music was so loud from the local store next door. They're called colmados or colmadones. If it's a colmadon, it's a big, like a bigger local store. And they pump up that music at night, blaring it. And, people go and have drinks, even on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. And that was hard for me to get adjusted to because there's no air conditioner or anything. So you have your windows open because it's so hot, but then you hear the blaring music of the local store right next to you. So that was an adjustment. But my host family was amazing. Then during that training period, they gave us a rural based training where we were in a town that is outside of Santo Domingo, and it's very rural. So you can't just get there in the regular public transportation. We would ride the bus to get there, and then we had to ride a motorcycle to get into the community. There were a couple people in the community who had cars, but most people didn't, and they would just leave, the same way on a motorcycle and then ride a larger bus if they wanted to get somewhere else in the country. And that was new for me too. It was the first time that I rode a motorcycle, and I have some funny stories about that. But that we had to carry around our helmets, our motorcycle helmets, everywhere we went when it wasn't tradition for others to wear helmets. So we were always very noticeable wearing our helmets. And I are carrying our helmets and then putting them on the motorcycle. And I also lived with an amazing host family there. And then finally, when that was during the training. So after the training, we were assigned to our permanent community. That's actually when the 2 years started. So it was actually 2 years and 3 months that the commitment was. And when I was moved to my permanent community, it was in right in the middle of the country, in an area that is outside of a town called Bonao. And it's an area that is mountainous with lake with there is some reservoirs but also rivers everywhere. Beautiful. Actually, the painting behind me right here reminds me of that community. That's why I have this painting. It's a painting that was painted in the Dominican Republic, and it reminds me of that community. It was the houses, there was more houses than what we see in the painting, but right next to the river, right next to the mountains. and I lived with a third host family, but then finally I did get my own home. So imagine, having your own home in the middle of the Dominican Republic, and it was really special to live there. But my own home, for example, didn't have an indoor bathroom. So I had an outdoor latrine where my shower and my bathroom, like my toilet and my shower was. So every time I had to go there, that's what I would use. And there were frogs. The story just keeps, I mean, there's just so
This is great.
many
This is
sometimes
great.
there are frogs that actually would jump on me while I was taking a shower, and that was scary because frogs like water, right?
That's great. So the first time you're in there taking a shower, you're excited. Like, I got my own place. Things are going great. I can work with this outdoor bathroom. And then a frog jumps on you.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I can only imagine like
Yeah.
uh, like, how big of frogs are we talking here? Like the little ones or like the big
No,
bullfrog?
they weren't huge, like maybe the size of my hand, my
Okay.
palm, not my hand, my palm. So they weren't humongous.
Okay.
They,
So
but
how,
I'll never forget their sticky little, yeah, feet.
oh, man, my face is starting to hurt. This is funny. Okay. So did this happen often?
It didn't happen a lot. It happened some. It happened like 2 to 3 times probably. So I took many showers without frogs jumping on me. But it
Okay.
was just one aspect. I mean, we're talking about getting used to things. What were my living quarters like? And that was one aspect. I mean, those were very unforgettable moments.
Oh man, I'll never forget when I bought the house I live in. It has a pool, and when we toured the house, the pool was beautiful, crystal clear. And when we closed on the house and went and walked the house, the pool was green. And I'm already thinking like, what the hell did we get ourselves into? And then bunch of frogs go by us and jump in the pool, and I'm like, what? So yeah, I get the not. I don't have the frog story on your level, but I remember just being like, I got to learn about frogs.
That's hilarious.
Oh man. Okay, so then now you've got your own place, and you're kind of getting your bearings, right? What was gratifying for you about your work there? What were like what was like a day, a week like there for you, and who did you work with, and what was that like?
Yeah. Since I was a health volunteer, my focus was working within the health realm, similar public health, that type of thing, specifically HIV and AIDS prevention. So I worked a lot with the youth, and I would have these different classes with them to teach them about HIV and AIDS and how, and other STDs or STIs, and how they were transmitted, and then how that ties into thinking about your life presently, but also in the future. Um, and so we would talk about all these things. We would have these classes with the youth, and then the youth would actually learn the presentations, and they would give the presentations to other youth groups, which
Okay.
was really neat. So that was the sustainable aspect of it, because they were continuing to learn the presentations. Additionally, I worked with women and nutrition, and we would have a cooking class at my. We would have actually, it was a couple women would get together before a nutrition class, and we would cook something together, and then we'd bring it to the nutrition class and share with everyone.
Cool.
And it was so fun because we would use ingredients that were local there. For example, there are avocado trees everywhere in the Dominican Republic. And avocado is eaten at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Just pieces of avocado though. But I taught them how to make guacamole, and guacamole. I mean, we know it's delicious, but then it also has the added tomatoes and garlic and onions and cilantro that add nutrition as well as flavor. So we would use, like I said, use those ingredients that they have, and then create something new with them. And that was so gratifying because it was like that awe factor,
Yeah.
like, wow, we can make this, or we can
Yeah.
make a delicious marinara sauce out of tomatoes when we're just used to eating tomatoes and salad. Um, and that was really gratifying. I would also say it was so gratifying to work with the youth and get to know them. The youth were they're the ones that I worked the closest with. I then was pretty close to being a youth as well. I was only 22 years old, and they were like 15, 16, and I felt really at home with them. But I still had the experience where I could teach them, and I had the knowledge to teach, and also a lot of resources. But that was very gratifying to see that they could make that because of what we were learning together, what they were learning, they would actually go on to make different decisions than their peers. It's really common in the community where I lived to have children at a very young age, and often many girls and would quit going to high school because they got pregnant, and it's just sad because they would quit. Here in the U.S. you can continue to go to high school, and then there's all these different resources that help if that's what somebody chooses. But there, it would pretty much end their education for the girls. So it was really important to talk about, okay, how do we prevent that? How do you really think through these types of things, and in different ways, and to see that the youth, even the youth that I worked with, I look back, I'm still in touch with some of them, and I see that they have made different life decisions, and they've gone on to be successful, and they have their families, and but they didn't go about it in a haphazard way, which sometimes happens.
Yeah, it does, no matter what city it is, right?
Of course, yeah.
Well, that's awesome stuff. So, as you were wrapping up your time there, then what? Actually, looking back, it these are like going to California for college, then going to Dominican Republic to serve in the Peace Corps. I mean, these are huge things that most people don't ever do in their whole lifetime, right? Like even just that much travel. And you said you're what, 22, 23, 24 at this
Yeah,
time?
yeah. It was right after college when I went, so I was 22.
So that really opens your brain and curiosity to like the impact that you can have and what's really possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it really did because in the US we get really, or at least okay, in my not I mean, I'm just speaking for myself, but I could be really comfortable, and we can be really comfortable because we're used to things. We can have things our way, things are accommodated for us. However, in the Dominican Republic, when we are the only, where everything is accommodated for people who are Dominican, um, and so then there was that learning curve in so many ways to learn about the culture. How does the culture work? That language, all the nuances, and then that, yeah, it just has a ripple effect, and it has had a ripple effect in my life. I feel where I've become more resilient, have more grit, perseverance, because all of those things were things that I actually had to practice to be able to be successful as a Peace Corps volunteer.
The resilience part is critical, right? And okay, so now you've progressed, or your time in the Dominican is up. Then what was next after that?
Yeah, I after 3 years being there, I returned to Kansas City, and I came back here. I was working full time at a nonprofit called Sunflower House, which
Okay.
is an incredible nonprofit that works to prevent child abuse. And the sound effects. And so I was working at Sunflower House, which is a wonderful nonprofit to prevent child abuse. And I created I was a bilingual coordinator there, where I would actually give these presentations about preventing child abuse to kids and then also to adults. And I would do it in English and Spanish. And and then that really sealed my love for nonprofits. I realized from being at Sunflower House that that's such an important mission, and really all nonprofits have such important missions. And I went back to school to get my master's in public administration with nonprofit management as a focus.
So
And
okay.
oh, I was going to say that actually I was really fortunate to get that school paid for because I was Peace Corps volunteer. There are Peace Corps fellowships and collaborations with specific schools, specifically UMKC, and my master's was paid for because I was Peace Corps volunteer.
That's awesome. Okay, so what was it like coming back to Kansas City after the national travel to the coast, and then you know going to the Dominican Republic? Was it just home is home? I'm excited to get back, or was there a little adjustment period?
I remember there was so much adjustment. I remember coming
No
back.
more frogs in the shower here, right?
That's true. Yeah. I remember coming back and being at awe of the options that we have in the US, going to Walmart, going to Costco, and just seeing so much. Like we have so many options. We can get anything here. Um, and I was almost overwhelmed with it. Going to Subway and having all these different possibilities of how my sandwich, like it actually was overwhelming for me. And it's interesting because I mean, I grew up here in the US with all of that, but by living in the Dominican Republic for 3 years and truly immersing myself so much in the culture, it was like I had forgotten about that. I'd forgotten about those aspects of the United States, how we just have an overabundance of things. So it was actually hard to get used to that.
Yeah.
I love the Dominican culture. It is such a culture of, I feel like, that embraces you. I felt so embraced by the Dominican culture, by my friends, by the people that I worked with. And in the U.S., we have a culture that is, even though we're very nice in Kansas City, just a little bit different. Like you don't, it's not as, it's not as touchy feely. It doesn't feel as close. You don't walk to someone's house and they say, "Hey, like, can I serve you coffee, juice, stay for lunch?" And then you're finally leaving 2 hours later, and they tell you, "No, don't leave. It's not. It's still early." But in the US, we don't do that. We're like, what? You like came to my house and announced? And so those are aspects that, I realized when I got back to the US, like, oh, we don't have that here. I've tried to bring, aspects of that back, but that it was hard to get used to that. I even remember going, like when I first got back, my new job took me out for lunch and we're at Panera and they had some kind of fruit juice. You could get a fruit like as one of the drink possibilities. And I asked my manager, I was like, "Oh, do you think it's natural? Do you think that they use natural fruit?" And she's like, "They probably use the concentrate." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. But in the Dominican Republic, 100% it would have been made with natural fruit." So all those aspects are things I had to get used to.
You know, you nailed it on a lot of things, right? Like even turn on Netflix or Prime or some streaming service. It's like, oh, let's just find a show to watch. It's 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. An hour and a half goes by. It's like, we can't figure out which one. I'm going to bed. I'm done with this. Too many options.
Too many options. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sensory overload. I'm with you 100%. And then like the part about neighbors coming over to hang out and just like, yeah, I remember growing up, it was like that a lot more, but now you got a ring doorbell and you're talking through that. What? Just leave the package.
Exactly. Yeah. Where I would leave my door open all
Everything's
the
a
time.
lot more distant
Yeah.
towards relationships than what it was. And I do agree. I think a lot of the community aspects are not as good because there's not that necessity for connection, or
Hmm.
however you want to word it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, so we made it to Panera with your new boss. The juice is not real. And then okay, so at this point in your career, are you starting to get the entrepreneurial itch, or what are the next steps along in your career?
Yeah. After graduating from my master's, I returned to Dominican Republic and and worked in the workforce. I lived there for 2 more years.
2 more years?
And I got married there
Awesome.
and it um and that is when I actually did become an entrepreneur for the second time. That So there are banana trees everywhere in the Dominican Republic and you eat bananas all the time. They're extremely accessible because they literally grow everywhere. But few people make banana bread. Banana bread is such a common recipe here in the US.
Delicious.
Everyone knows how to make banana bread here. And banana bread is one of the first things that I started to make as a child. I had a Sesame Street book that had a banana bread recipe. And and so when I was in the Dominican Republic for the second time, I started to make banana bread and I would share with my friends and they were just like, "Oh, this is so good." Like they would have those reactions that we don't have in the US because we're used to banana
Lisa,
bread.
how do you know how to make this?
Yes. Yeah. And so I started to make it. And that's when I saw the potential to sell it.
Oh
And
yeah.
I started to sell it. My husband and I would stay up late because we had full-time jobs, and then we would come home in the evenings and we would bake until late. And we would sell to a local cafeteria. There was like a phone company that was close to us, and I had a contract to sell to that local cafeteria. And I would sell my banana muffins, and then also to friends. Like friends would make orders with us, and I started to do that. So that was my second round. That was actually, it was a more formalized business. I had a logo. It was called, I had a logo and everything, and that was really helpful to make ends meet actually, because even though my husband and I both had full-time jobs, it was hard to like just make ends meet to have a little bit of money if we wanted to travel, or just like a little bit of extra money. And that money from those muffins helped to have that little extra if we wanted to take a trip or anything.
Like how many banana muffins are we talking here?
I would maybe we would bake them like 3 or 4 times a week,
No.
and quantities of like maybe like 3 to 4 batches. So it wasn't on an industrial level at all. I was using my oven that actually they're smaller. The ovens in the most of the ovens in the Dominican Republic are smaller than American ovens. Like they're a lot more narrow. So it takes a little bit longer. So I didn't have the equipment to make them on an industrial scale.
Okay. Awesome. So that, and at this point, getting married, how did that change your perspective on, wow, we have all these life dreams, these exciting things we want to do. Is that also where it's like, okay, we need to find ways to make more money together or jump in and try different things. So like now all of a sudden you're making banana bread together, right? Like that, these are great experiences. So what did that do to your mindset to did that help accelerate like okay, like now it's really time to ramp up or what anything?
I think what it did to my mindset is it showed me that if I have an idea that is unique for that area, it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be an idea that I come up with, but if I have an idea that is unique for my audience, it can become a business. And I saw that with other entrepreneurs around. For example, there was a German bakery in Delhi in our neighborhood, and it was literally, people from Germany who had moved to the Dominican Republic, and they would sell these amazing deli meats, German deli, like sausages and baked goods from their home. And they had this business, and there, like down the street, there was a paella place where you could actually go and order paella, or you could sit there and eat paella. And paella is a Spanish rice that has different seafood in it. For any If any listener is wondering what paella is, and they that was unique because even though we were right on the coast, paella wasn't a common dish in the Dominican Republic. It's a Spanish dish, not a Dominican dish. So they had a niche. So I think from my experience with something that I could provide that was unique to my audience, and from looking around and seeing other entrepreneurs providing something unique, I realized if we can provide something unique to our audience, we can have a business.
That's awesome. Okay, so then you're in the Dominican Republic and you've got your banana bread company, you have your job, you got married. So that's a lot of life stuff going on. You're getting to know each other, you're getting to know yourself all over again. You have these business ideas and adventures. Then what next from there?
Yeah, well, my husband and I returned to the United States. So it was his first time in Kansas City, and he loves Kansas City. But he's grown to love it because it was his first time, and we moved back here because Kansas City is my home. It was amazing living in the Dominican Republic, but we wanted to move back here.
So did you guys come back, check it out first, or it was like, here we go, pack the bags, it's time to go back?
Here we go. Here we go. And went.
Enough of these shower frogs.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Well, another thing too, when we were living after getting married, um, in the Dominican, or in Santo Domingo, we lived in Santo Domingo in the city. Like we were within walking distance from the Malecon, which is it's like a cement sidewalk that you can walk on, and the water is right there. And we were in like a high density neighborhood, and the water would go out all the time. So that was, we had barrels of water that we would save because the water would go out for days. Like, it not just like occasionally it'll go out here if they're working on your sewer system. No, it would go out for like 5 days at a time. And so that was something that was really welcome when we came back to the United States, that we didn't have to worry about that.
yeah. Yeah, that That is a totally different worry than what the things you worry about here, right? So you get back to Kansas City. What do you and your husband do for work at this point?
Yeah, he worked, he worked at some, okay, this was a culture shock, a climate shock for him. We returned in the wintertime and he started doing snow removal. So can you imagine coming from a tropical country to Kansas City and do snow removal?
No,
But
no,
I mean,
I can't imagine that.
he is such a hard worker and like, it's hard. It takes a while to get a job that you're really looking for. So he was on it and started doing snow removal. And thankfully, he just did one season of that though. And
Really getting right into it and embracing
yeah,
the climate.
yeah, yeah. Oh, um, and then with time, he got his CDL license, which I commend him so much for that because imagine learning about all of the different parts of a semi truck in a language that is not your native language. It's hard. And the CDL license, there's courses for Americans to learn everything and get practice. And he didn't do it first. He just studied on his own and he got his CDL license. So that's
That's
what he
awesome.
does now.
Wow, that would be hard.
It was
Be
challenging.
hard in your native language, not
Exactly. And that's why there's courses. A lot of people join courses. He didn't join a course. He studied on his own. It took him a couple times to pass the test. But he knew all the information in Spanish, but it was a little bit of a challenge, but he passed it and that's what he does. He works for the post office.
awesome. Okay, and what about you? Where are you at in the game right now? When you moved
Yeah.
to the city?
After coming back, I worked at Girl Scouts for a while and then I was inspired to have my business Urban Hikes Kansas City.
Here we go. Okay. So, do you feel like the part of what's cool about explaining your whole journey is in your story you can kind of hear how Urban Hikes Kansas City comes together, right? The curiosity, the interest, the bringing people together, the sense of community, the history, like all these different things. Like, tell us how. So, where did the idea come from? Urban Hikes Kansas City.
I was inspired by a podcast. I was listening to Side Hustle Nation, and it's an excellent podcast that highlights different side hustles. And there's somebody in San Francisco who has an urban hiking business, and I heard her on this podcast, and I was like, this is something I need to do. It, I mean, here in Kansas City, we have hills, so you can actually do an urban hike right here in the middle of the city. You can feel like you're hiking. We have so much history, we have so much art, and I have a passion to be outdoors. And that was the inspiration. That was the catalyst.
So, what was the first hike? And wait, so how did the first hike come together? So did
Okay, yeah.
you go
So that
walk it yourself? Did you and your husband go, I have an idea, let's go check this out? Did you Google a like MapQuest? Where are we at in this?
yeah, and I'm glad you asked that because there is a time lapse between that light bulb stage when I listened to the podcast and then actually having my first hike. There's probably a time lapse of about a year and a half or so. Because first I was validating my idea. I would tell my friends, my coworkers about it to see what their thoughts were. And then I love to run. So I would run with a coworker and my sister around Kansas City. And the areas that I thought could be that had potential for urban hikes, we would meet there to run. I'd be like, okay, let's meet in the crossroads today. Let's meet in the west side. Let's meet in KCK. Let's meet in the river market. And we wouldn't just run on the streets or on the sidewalks. We would explore in a big way. We would go through all the alleyways. We would find hidden steps. If there's the end of a street that we didn't know what was at the end, we'd be like, let's run to the end of the street. Let's see what's there. Oh, there's a bridge. What's underneath the bridge? How can we go there? I mean, it was fascinating. And it was just exploring on foot. And and then by doing that, by running those areas, I was able to pinpoint some really cool areas. And then the history came later when I actually started to form my route. My first route was the Crossroads West Side hike, which is an urban hike that we still give. And that one started to come together by running in those areas and then seeing what I call anchor points. And actually the word anchor point, I think, was coined by my possibly coined by the person that I was inspired by in California. But the anchor points are the areas that we actually talk about. So if it's a building or if it's an area, there is a moment where we talk about something, and it could be a piece of art, and then I would research those anchor points.
That's awesome. So like the first one, did you have like a notepad with you where you're sketching it out, like, or a map, like how, or were you
It was
like
mainly
phone?
taking pictures. I would run, and then I would take a picture of something that I thought could be part of the route, and then I started to organize all of those onto a document. But when I'm still out running, walking, I would just take a picture and then
So
look at those.
one of the biggest challenges when, like, this is trailblazing, right? Like this isn't something that was in Kansas City or really anywhere outside of what you heard on the podcast, right? And so we have an idea. Oh yeah, I'm excited. I don't know what I'm excited about yet, but we're excited. How did you figure out how to package it in a way that you could market and explain to people, here's what the urban hike is, here's what the experience is, here's how we sell it.
That's a good question about packaging it. And really, there was a lot of trial and error
Yeah.
for me, because this was the first time for me to do this. I mean, the closest I had to having a business was having a muffin business, which is totally different.
Yeah.
I knew that, like, from talking to the woman in California, her name is Alex Kennan. By talking to Alex about how she promoted hers, that gave me ideas.
Wait. You skipped that part. So you heard the podcast, then
Okay,
you reached out to Alex, and
I
it
did.
sounds like you now have a relationship.
Okay, yes, I did reach out to her because I thought, well, I'm inspired by her idea.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that if I actually take action because of her idea, she's not thinking of coming to Kansas City, and like I don't want to step on her toes. And then I
Was she
had questions.
excited you called her?
She was great. I mean, I don't know if she was excited, but she was really nice to me.
Yeah.
And we still are in touch. Like we'll comment on each other's Instagram post, and then I have family in California. So I brought like 8 of them on an urban hike to go, an urban hike with her business.
Oh, cool.
And she met for coffee. And those, like, her advice that she gave me was really helpful for me. And she told me, she wasn't thinking of coming to Kansas City. She's great in San Francisco. And so she helped me to know, how to promote it. She told me about the importance of having a booking system. Like, this isn't something that I'm going to create Facebook events for or Eventbrite. I mean, this is just like you would book a concert ticket. I mean, you would book an urban hike. And she gave me all of like that logistical advice about that. And then she also told me the importance of reviews and how reviews were really helpful for her. So from the beginning, when somebody would go on an urban hike, I asked them for a review, and I would send them a link for a review. And we actually just passed 500 positive reviews
What?
on Google.
500? Congrats.
500.
That's awesome.
And
Wow.
so it's not like I had to do these. I didn't have to hire an advertising company to do these promotional packages. It was that word of mouth really helped in Kansas City. As we know, word of mouth is huge. Additionally, my reviews, and then with time, my social media has helped as well.
So what was your first hike like?
Yeah. My first hike was a lot longer than what we offer now, because I love the exercise aspect of it. And I was like, okay, it was like 6.5 miles. And because I'm like, this is a hike. Like, you're not going to go on like a 1 mile hike. I mean, and so it was 6 miles long. It covered so much. Starting Liberty Memorial, alleyways in the crossroads, west side, and then we went over to Case Park, which is in the northwestern corner of downtown, and came back on the streetcar. And then we had to walk all the way up Liberty Memorial's hill to get back to our cars.
Big hill.
It was about 6.5 miles, and I got feedback on those. And with time, I actually pared it down, where that hike now is closer to 4.5 or 5 miles, depending on the route that we take. We sometimes even take a shorter version of that hike. But we highlighted the same things that we highlight today. If you were to come on it, the history, The stories that are untold stories, and in the hidden gems, like there are hidden steps specifically on that hike. If sometimes we go there today, sometimes we don't, depending on the length. But we highlight these hidden gems, and it's still what we do on that hike today.
So how many people do you have on your first hike? And like what was your in what was your mindset like as you're going through this? Is like, I'm doing it. Like this is it worked. This is crazy. Like what's going through your head? Or are you like freaked out? Like here's the like what's going through your head at this?
Oh yeah. Well, my first hikes actually were with the a whole family that has a website business here, and they created my website.
Awesome.
And so they needed to get photos, but I had never actually had an urban hike with people to have photos, and they came on that one. And so a lot of the photos are on my website are photos that they took during that urban hike. And it's the Boyer Web Studios, and I still work with them for my website. they they're on that first hike, and I remember I had a friend from Toastmasters, which is a public speaking club, and I asked her, evaluate me. I want you to tell me what I need to change with my speaking. And so that was really helpful as well, because she gave me feedback regarding speaking, and I had that feedback from her. And then I remember getting the general feedback from the group. But I remember being nervous. I remember thinking that I really needed to offer a snack. So I had collaborated with a local granola bar maker and went to her house and picked up some granola bars. And just at the same time, I was like, is this really happening? Like, I have a group of 10 people out and I'm taking them for 6 miles around the city. It was exciting, but I was nervous as well.
Did you advise them not to be barefoot or in flip flops like they're in California?
I probably did, because I have on my other considerations, I always say wear comfortable walking shoes.
Okay, so when you started out, was it just you?
Yes, it was just me. I I did everything in the business. It was just me when I first started.
So what were the biggest challenges at that phase? Because right, so you map out your hike, you fulfill, you take people. It's like, yeah, we're doing it. Then what? Then you've got to collect money, manage your social media, get reviews, pay your bills, on and on and on. Scheduling is a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say my biggest challenge, but you asked, the question was, what was my biggest challenge at the beginning? Yeah, I would say getting the word out about my business, because I went from not existing to existing. So that's hard. Like to get the word out. I remember at the beginning, that first year, talking to my sister on the phone, and she was trying to find me online, and I had a website, but she was just trying to see if I would come up if she Googled some keywords. And she's like, Lisa, I'm Googling urban hiking in Kansas City. I don't see you. I'm Googling hiking. I don't see you. And she was Googling all these words that should be relevant, and she did not find me. That was a challenge. It was really good that she did that, because then it made me think a little bit harder. What do I need to do to improve my SEO and my online presence? And so I would really the challenge was just getting people to know about my business. I would offer urban hikes on a weekend, but maybe 4 people would sign up, where that's not, I mean, it's great to have 4 people. It was practice for me, which was good in the early days, but I mean, it's not very profitable to only have 4 people sign up on an urban hike. And then I'd say second, my challenge that is a direct result of the amount of people that come on our urban hikes, and if people know about it, is that first year and year two, I didn't make any money, compared to what I had to pay for my website, for my insurance, my business cards. There are a lot of internal costs, even though I don't have a brick and mortar, that I had to pay for. And I mean, I had to plan financially to not make any money, because those first 2 years I didn't make money.
Yeah. So, and what was the phase that you've grown? What year are you in now?
Year six.
Year
Are-
6.
Yeah, year six. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Okay, so year 2, year 3, are the hikes starting to have more people in them? Are you starting to add more hikes? And then at what point did you say, okay, I can't do all this. I need to add people now.
Yeah. Well, I started in 2019,
Mhm.
and that was when it was all me.
Yep.
Then by the end of 2019 and I realized that I needed to dedicate all of my time to my business if I wanted it to grow. So I let Girl Scouts know that I was going to stop working at Girl Scouts after being there for about 5 years, and that I would stop so that I could focus full time on my business. But then what happened in 2020? We know what happened in 2020. And I remember I was gearing up for my spring urban hikes. The weather was beautiful. And then all of a sudden, we have a shelter in place and we couldn't have groups out. I mean, we remember those times. You
Yeah.
can't get together in groups. And what we did was, or I say what we did, what I did, because it was still just me. I focused during that time, I focused on networking, building my social media presence during that time. Finally, when we were able to have groups, was it was like May and June, and we could wear masks, we could be socially distanced. And then I had a friend from Kansas City, Kansas, who said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a Strawberry Hill urban hike?" And I was like, yes, yes. Right now, I just have one route that I've been doing. And yes, I'm from KCK, so I love to highlight KCK. And she and I worked together to come up with the route. Her name is Rebecca, and she was also a guide for that route. And that really helped Urban Hikes Kansas City to grow, because on a Saturday morning, instead of just having one urban hike with 10 people, we could have two urban hikes with 20 people. And then, as I mentioned before, word of mouth is so powerful in Kansas City, and the word of mouth spread. The pandemic at that time actually was beneficial for us because people were looking for outdoor activities, and there was just so few activities that people could do. But we were open, we had our masks on, we were socially distanced, and it was great, and we were outdoors.
That's awesome. Well, the part about your business growing is awesome. Pandemic, that was a whole different animal.
Exactly, it was a
Um,
really rough time.
okay, so then if you fast forward to today, how many hikes do you run in a week? How many people do you have on your team? How many people go on the hikes? Like what does that look like?
Yeah, right now I have 10 guides on
What?
our guide team. Yeah, yeah. My business has grown because of the guides that I have.
Awesome.
I'm so grateful to God just for the ability that, or just for the I feel like the people that have come my way, and most of our guides have approached me to be part of our guides team. So we have a very full guide team right now, and so but every single one of them is so important because they have come up with a lot of the hikes that we have. We have about 20 routes. Even May, like we're about to come into May because it's April right now. We're about to come into May of 2025, and we're offering 14 different routes. So if somebody wanted to hit 14 different urban hikes in May, they could, which is unreal. Of course, my guides are mainly giving those hikes. I give a lot of hikes during the week, and the hikes that we predominantly have open to the public that someone can book are on the weekends, and those are the hikes that mostly my guides give. And then I personally give about from 2 to 4 hikes a week, depending on the demand that we have. We do a lot of urban hikes with corporate groups, and a lot of corporate groups want to have something really fun for their staff to do, and an urban hike is perfect for that. We do that a lot during the week, in addition to school groups, and
So
that's what
how has your role evolved from the beginning of wearing all the hats to what you do now?
yeah, I still wear most of the hats in some form,
Yeah.
but it's much less.
Yep.
I as you know, before, if we had an urban hike going on, I was the one giving the urban hike. Now I can actually travel and be somewhere else and have urban hikes happening because
Yes.
guides are giving them, and so that's completely changed. And also, at the beginning, I mean, I was the one who researched the hike for my first route. Today, I mean, I pay my guides to research the hikes. They do it's a hard lift. It's so much research, so many hours of studying, of research to create an urban hike because they're so highly researched. And I've worked with them to do that, where in the past it was just me. And I am able to step back a little bit on the weekends since I have a lot of urban hikes during the weeks, during the weekdays, where initially I didn't have hikes during the week because the word hadn't spread about our business, about my business. So people didn't know that they could have a staff hike or a student hike. That really has been something that has come 2021 and after.
Yeah. So, okay, this is wild. Lisa, thank you for sharing all this. This has been awesome. So, looking back at your first business as selling bracelets in high school and turning teachers into brand ambassadors, that was awesome. Um, to now, how like that is it's an incredible story. But how would you say you've grown the most? And one, how have you grown the most? But also, what have you enjoyed most about the journey so far?
You know, enjoying the most, like what I've enjoyed the most about the journey, I think, is to see, just to see all of our urban hikes develop and unfold in front of me, because this is Kansas City history. This is Kansas City art. It's Kansas City, and there's so much that many Kansas Citians don't know, and that I didn't know myself. Like, it's, as I mentioned, it was many of my guides have created the urban hikes we have, and for them to dive deep into the research and then come up with these incredible routes to highlight Kansas City, that has been one of the most one of the things that brings me the most satisfaction. And when our hikers come and say, wow, I didn't know that this existed. Wow, I'm going to return to this area. I'm going to return to this business. And they will even email me and say, hey, I went to Slap's Barbecue afterwards, or I went to this coffee shop because of our urban hike. Those are some of the moments that bring me the most satisfaction, and to see how we can be so creative with it. It's like a work of creativity to bring these urban hikes together and then have people come out and enjoy them. And so I think just that brings me the most satisfaction.
Well, it's amazing that you can live somewhere your whole life and never treat it like a tourist and actually get out and see it and experience it. And it sounds like that's exactly what you do, is give people an opportunity to see, like, really get to know the city. So it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and our majority audience is actually from Kansas City.
That's awesome. So how have you grown the most in business
Yeah,
in this journey?
yeah, I would say I have really grown in the aspect of networking, and like really realizing the power in networking. I know I've already mentioned it, the power of word of mouth, but part of that is networking as well, and talking to somebody and sharing about my business, and then or maybe not even sharing about my business, just getting to know them, getting to know their business, and then afterwards, maybe we have coffee, or maybe we go on a walk, and then what comes out of that, because we have a lot of collaborations. I'm so grateful that my business, I mean, through my business, I have all these collaborations in Kansas City, and a lot of those have come from networking. So I would say I've grown in networking itself, recognizing the importance of networking. And I would also say, this is kind of nitty gritty, but I've grown on the aspect of financial, like just financial literacy,
Yeah.
because
Oh yeah.
I, I mentioned I did this business because my passion is to be outdoors. We have Kansas City history, we have art, we have all this, but I didn't say because I love to, run my finances. And I have learned so much during this time. I have an amazing mentor through the SCORE mentoring program, and she challenged me to start reconciling my bank account. She's challenged me to really learn the financial statements, like not power, but the P&L, the cash flow, and use them, and update them monthly. And that was something that when I came up with the idea for my business, I was not even thinking about that, but I have grown tremendously in that because I have to be able to keep my finances in order.
Awesome. And so true, right? Okay, so Lisa, to wrap up, if you were to, you know, give a plug for Urban Hikes Kansas City, who's it for, and what could they expect on the experience? I know you highlighted a lot of it, but to really talk to the group that would be excited to join a hike.
Yeah, Urban Hikes Kansas City is really for anyone who likes to get out and walk and learn. I we have our urban hikes that are on the weekend that anybody can book. And also, I say someone that gets out to walk and learn, but also we have accessible urban hikes. So if somebody is in a wheelchair, or if they want to bring a stroller, contact us and we will let them know what the terrain is like on the urban hike that they're interested in. And some are more accessible than others, but we invite, anybody that wants to come and wants to be out for, 2 to 3 hours. It could even be less, but and explore Kansas City. It's for that person who wants to know more about Kansas City, the history and the present. And then that's in the week, like on the weekends, but then the weekdays, that is really for anybody who has a private group that they want to show Kansas City. So corporate groups, school groups, and we customize those urban hikes so that sometimes they're an hour long. Sometimes sometimes they end at a brewery, or sometimes we have other customizations just according to what that group is interested in. We are so flexible and so creative and are able to customize it really in a way that is satisfactory to whoever asks us.
What a cool like team building exercise too, right? Like imagine like the getting out of the office, getting out of the conference room and going and hanging out and having a great experience together and seeing the city and hiking. That sounds awesome. I'm sure you've seen a lot of teams come together through that too.
Yeah, yeah, and it is, and we see that. Our most recent urban hike was with NAIC, and they had two groups of about 20 people come out to do our library district urban hike to celebrate National Library Week.
Yeah.
We've had teachers, and we do we do see people come together. We see them experience each other in a different way that's different than being in the office or their traditional setting.
That's awesome. So Lisa, to close out, how do people find and book a hike?
They can find us on urbanhikeskc.com. That's our website, urbanhikeskc.com. There we have a booking button, either calendar of hikes or book an urban hike. It's on there, and you can see what we're offering for that weekend. And then anyone can email me as well. My email is adventurer@urbanhikeskc.com. That is also on our website if they want a customized urban hike. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well as Urban Hikes KC.
Awesome. Well, Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your journey and being on the business growth journey with us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for all of your interesting questions.
Awesome. Thank you.